Hey, this is Kevin from Kevin's BBQ Joints, and this is 21 Questions with Joe McGregor, Ministers of Smoke. Good morning, Joe. It's been a while. I'm so glad to talk to you again, and I have 21 plus questions to ask you, but I really appreciate you taking the time, and it's so good to see you. You look well.
Well, thank you. Likewise.
Thank you. Yeah, we both look okay. We've survived the 4 years that we have. When was the last time we
We're
talked?
still here.
3 years ago?
Yeah, seems like it.
Yeah, yeah.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, let's jump right in. I know that we covered certain things that might be overlap, but a lot of people, are just jumping into what I'm doing, and there's people that have been on it forever. Ministers of Smoke. Can you discuss the name?
Yeah, and in fact, this gets confused because sometimes people say, "Oh, hey, it's the minister of smoke."
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
not the minister of smoke. That's not what this is. It's playing off of the whole barbecue as a religious experience concept. It's a meme and it gets used a lot. Other people, I'm not the first to ever rely on that to leverage that. And somehow in my mind, I was like, hey, these pitmasters are the ministers of smoke. So ministers of smoke is meant to be homage to the pitmasters who are making this food and the subject of this project, right? So Ministers of Smoke project is to highlight those pitmasters who are doing this.
Did you have this concept, this idea of doing this project from the get-go, or at what point? Because I don't think I asked you this. When did it shift to this is something I really want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I started the idea before I started like the account or anything like that. It
Okay.
was, hey, this would be fun to do, and so I created the account and I started doing it. So
Was there a barbecue joint that you stopped at that you thought this could work, or was it just something that kind of mulled around in your head?
Oh, that's a good question because I don't know that I remember exactly. I don't think that there was anything like any one specific place or any one specific person that I thought, oh, this person needs to be highlighted. I had already had the idea and I had reached out to a few pitmasters. And after I did the very first one, I the idea kind of morphed a little bit into just purely a photography project because that's what it was. Is I was going to take pictures of the ministers of smoke, pitmasters. And after I talked to the first person, who was Chad Sessions at Smoke Sessions BBQ, I was like, man, he's got a cool story. I bet all these other guys have cool stories too. And it became pairing the picture with the background. And that's so after that very first picture, that's where I think it probably matured a little bit. Like the idea took a little bit different of a turn from what I originally thought, but that's where it happened.
And then before I forget, because I want to put this in, you do sell your prints now, right?
I do. It's been a long
Yeah.
time in the making, and part of it, part of the timing is I'm not gonna like be egotistical and say I'm a perfectionist, but every time I look at one of my pictures, I'm like, oh, I should have changed that, or I should have edited this, and allowing myself to like, okay, this picture is fine, and let me make it available to people. And it started rather organically. People would just ask, hey, can I get, starting with the pitmasters, hey, can I get a print of that? And then some other people's moms, everybody started asking. I'm like, yeah, you know what, I'm just going to make these available and I'm going to stop trying to re-edit them. I'm just going to boom, here they are. And so now some of them are for sale, and I'm trying to work on making more available.
Okay. So if someone reaches out and says such and such and such and such, you could discuss it back and forth and kind of figure out if
That's
that,
right. Yeah. I mean, any of the pictures that I've done, I can make prints of.
and almost any size, right?
Yeah, that's right. Some lend themselves to other sizes. Some are better shaped to
Yeah,
particular
for larger,
sizes.
yeah, because I think that's just like a photography thing, right? Because
That's
some make more
yeah,
sense in a small version as opposed to a larger version.
right. And sometimes when you move from one size to even if you're talking about large prints, the ratio, the aspect ratio isn't always the same.
Oh,
And
that's
so
true.
there may be something on the side of one of the pictures that might get cut off, cropped out when you move to one size, but not the other.
How much in the weeds do you get in editing your photos?
Oh, pretty
Should I
far.
should I ask your wife that?
But yeah, you know, the funny thing about editing is I started out as somewhat of a purist and not believing that you should edit very much at all. And somewhere along the line in this project, so in the past 3 years, I've gone completely the other
Oh, that's
direction
interesting.
to where I am willing to edit just about anything, and I do anything that distracts me or I think isn't where I want it to be. And that doesn't mean all the pictures are perfect. I definitely have imperfections in the pictures. So at some point, something bothers me enough to where, you know, I either want to remove something from the picture or darken this corner or, you know, create more contrast here. And I'll probably look at these pictures in 20 years and think, oh, I should have done this or that.
Yeah.
But when I'm editing these pictures, I do try to put like a little time limit on it and say, you know, if I can't edit it in this amount, then it probably, you know, I'm trying to make the picture something that never was. So
That makes sense. And then I had asked this before, and this isn't on our major list that I had sent you before, but what type of camera do you use, what lenses, and then also lighting too, because you do highlight that on your personal account a lot of time.
so I mostly shoot Fujifilm GFX 100, and that's where most of these pictures. I started the project with the Nikon D810, which is a DLSR camera, but in this environment, it was kind of an old camera anyway, but in this environment, just kind of wasn't getting the job done, especially because in so many pit rooms, it's dark
Yeah, that's what I was
and
gonna say.
it doesn't handle shadow. That camera didn't handle shadows very well. So I sought out, you know, did the research and decided that the GFX 100 would be the best vehicle to do what I'm doing. And it happens to be a good camera all around. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
what you're taking pictures of. And then I supplement that with a Sony A7R4, mostly because the GFX 100 is great at portraiture, but it's got a slow motor. So if
Oh,
somebody's doing action, it's just not equipped for that. And
well,
so I bring in that Sony because it can shoot at a really high clip.
do you lean towards certain lenses?
Yeah, so I have more lenses than I need.
Of course,
And
so do I.
you know, and I use lenses for other things, but on the GFX, most of the portraits are shot in it. It's a little bit the measurements are a little bit different when we're talking about full frame cameras, but in Fujifilm makes 110 millimeter lens that equates to I think 85 or 87 millimeter in 35 millimeter full frame. Most of my portraits are that. It's my telephoto lens, even though it probably doesn't count as a telephoto lens. And then the other shots are shot on what the equivalent, I believe, is a 35 millimeter. So the idea behind Ministers of Smoke was meant to be environmental portraiture. So that way, you know, I'm not just taking pictures of people's faces. I'm taking pictures of someone in their element, right, which is a
Mhm.
pit room. And in order to capture what's around them, I use a 35 millimeter really, really commonly. And in fact, that 35 millimeter stays on my camera body until I decide that a different length is appropriate. I have a wide angle lens for that. But on my Sony, you know, I have more lenses for the Sony, but there is a particular lens. It is for those who know Sony, it's a G Master lens, which is
I've
their
heard of
top
that.
line. It's a 50 millimeter, a 1.2 lens, and I think it is awesome. It is so sharp, and the colors are so smooth, and it basically I'm at a point to where I leave that on my camera unless there's something I can't do with that lens. And so maybe I want to take a really distant photo, then I'll take it off and I'll use. I have a 14 millimeter wide angle, and so that creates some fun perspectives. So I'll do that. But anyway, probably 80% of Ministers of Smoke shots are shot on those three lenses, the 85, the 35, and then on my Sony, the 50 millimeter.
So are you mostly using a tripod, or are you?
Almost all portraits. So if it appears like that person is standing there,
Mhm.
that's on a tripod. Just because I don't want to take any chances with like handshake or anything
Yeah.
like that. However, if it doesn't look like that, like if that person's walking or working briskets, or sometimes just the angle is a little bit difficult for a tripod, then those are handheld.
Okay. All right. And then lighting wise, do you usually use two lights? I've seen
Well,
some of your setups from a distance. You've taken some photos of the setup, which is kind of cool for people.
I probably should do that more often. I like when I see other
Uh-huh.
photographers do
So do I.
a little behind the scenes and see how they're lighting something. Almost all shots have at least one light. And in my mind, I'm usually trying to keep it to one light.
Okay.
But I will do either, I don't know why. So either one light or three lights. And so
Odd
it,
numbers.
it it really depends on the situation and what we're doing. It can be difficult in a small dark area to start adding too many lights, because then you just have to sit down and light the whole thing the way
Yeah.
you want it. If you introduce one light, then it makes a little more sense. It just depends on what's happening. So you're trying to motivate the light, right? So you're trying to do a light that doesn't look like you just set up a light. You're
Mhm.
trying to accentuate what's already there. And sometimes the pit rooms that we're in, they're just not a great motivation of light. And so that makes it a little tough. And in those cases, sometimes you're just lighting the whole. When I show up to, like, if it's so part of this answer is dependent on where did it happen. If it's in Texas where I can drive there, then I might have several lights. And I
Uh,
have small lights, and I've got lights. I've got more lights than I will ever use in a single shoot. And if I'm flying somewhere, well, I'm not taking very many lights. I usually just one light.
do you ever put a light on top of your camera? What's that? I don't even forget what that's technically called.
Yeah, like just an on-camera flash.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever done that. Although I have an on-camera flash, but it has a stand, and usually I'll go put it somewhere because it's triggered on the remote.
Gotcha.
And so I might, like, I've used that as an accent light to light up a pit like behind somebody, just so that
So it
that
flashes.
gets
That's
lit. I use that on camera light pretty often, especially when I travel, but never on the top of my camera. It's pretty unpleasing if it's just straight at somebody.
I've seen people put like dampeners or something on it so it softens the.
Yeah.
How many barbecue joints do you think you visited, or roughly?
So I know that it's just a little over 100. If I had to rough guess it, probably like 105, 110 in that range. I think I had counted 105, and I've
Okay.
been a couple more places since then. And then I don't know whether to count the places I've been to twice.
That's true.
But I think it's probably a little over 100 unique barbecue joints.
And how many pit builders?
Five or six,
Okay.
somewhere in that range.
I know you've done Moberg, M&M, Suntex too.
Syntax, Big Phil's. But yeah, I
Millskill.
love Millskill. That's right. I've been to Millskill.
Yeah.
That was, I think, the first one I went to. I love, well, so my family, that was the family business. And so I love welding shots, and don't really have a ton to do with barbecue other than they happen to be welding a pit together.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoy it. I have a good time. And from a photographic standpoint, they're pretty high contrast pictures. They're
Yeah.
fun. You got that arc going, and it's just pretty cool. I think it's
I
pretty
think
cool.
so too. No, I dig it so much. Like that's like when I see you go to a pit builder, it makes me even a little bit more jealous when you go to barbecue places. But just because I love that world, and I love people doing things with their hands, like forging knives, and also it does lend itself to amazing photographs.
I have a good time. I appreciate their art the same way that I
Yeah.
appreciate the art of the barbecue pit masters.
And they appreciate you coming because it's a nice way to give people a glimpse into what they're doing.
Austin Smokeworks as well.
Oh, Austin Smoke. Oh, wow. Okay, that's really cool. Okay, so then I'll try to remember. I'll make a list too of people that we've discussed in the body of this, so hopefully people can understand. And so we've talked about this before, and I'm sure people have asked you, are you working on a book?
Yes, I am. This whole project has been working towards a book, but now it is serious. I'm probably about halfway through assembling final shots and editing the little vignettes that go with those shots. And hopefully we'll get it to the publisher. I'm already a few months late, so a little behind schedule. Hopefully I get those in the next maybe month or two.
Oh, okay.
To the editor.
So it's a 2024 release of this.
I hope so. Like I said, I'm very behind schedule, so I don't know where that puts the timeline,
Yeah,
but I would imagine that they would try to get it for Christmas 2024.
that'd be great. That would be killer. And I know that a lot of people would dig that. Is that something? So then, is it in your mind a coffee table type book?
Yes, that's
Okay.
the idea.
I think it lends itself perfectly. That's awesome. Okay. Well, let me know. Let us all know.
Should be fun.
Yeah.
It it has produced a little internal strife, a little internal consternation because sometimes you have a pitmaster that you love and adore, but just your photography wasn't on that day, and so that's been the difficulty so far. It's
Yeah.
just been, man, I really like this place. I love to eat there, or I love that story, but the picture, the failing was mine. I wasn't on my game that day apparently, and and so not all of my pictures will be in this book, and in fact, only a fraction of them will be, and that kind of
And
on a
that'll be
personal
tough.
level is yeah, it's tough, and I'm struggling with that, but I guess that's how these things go.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I never really thought about it. I'm sure that, and especially too, because you're photographing people as opposed to it's not just a photography book in general. So it's okay. Yeah, yeah. So I maybe we could somehow get that across when I'm sure that you'll have some maybe personal emails or calls or with people to let them
Yeah,
know, hey, no offense. This is just it's just the way
right.
it kind of worked. And you want to present them in the best light. So it could be, part two, a book two, right?
Yeah, right. Well, I have to
Fingers
go back because
just a lot of
the pictures aren't, so it's, and that's what's difficult, right? It's not that the people aren't worthy; it's that my photography wasn't worthy, and we'll see how it all shakes out. I think virtually all the people that I know are really cool and
definitely.
understanding people. It's more of like you just want to do that for them, and man, I wish I was a better photographer. Make sure it was 100% every time.
They live online, most of them, right?
I think there's one picture so far I'm not sure has been published, but all the others are on the account.
What have you learned about yourself through this project?
Oh man. I think that number one, sometimes I joke that as an attorney by day, sometimes I joke that I don't like people, but it's actually not true. I really like people, and one thing that keeps fueling me to do this is that I quite like these people. I like the men and women in the barbecue world and want them to succeed. And they're going to succeed without me, but anything I can do to help tell these stories and show these images because I like them, not necessarily because I'm like, hey, look at this picture that I took. So I guess that's what I've learned about me. It's not necessarily about trying to showcase something that I've done, but maybe using something I've done to showcase someone else. And I think I really enjoy that and have loved doing that for other people and enjoy that process. I also think that I've learned a little bit about myself in terms of photography, just from a personal style perspective. I'm sure that my style, my quote unquote style, I'm here air quoting here, I'm sure that'll evolve. It always has, but I do like shadows and dark and grit. And I probably, and it doesn't mean all my pictures need to have all those in there, but that is what I prefer. And I think I learned that by shooting dark pit
Yeah.
runs. I'm like, hey, just lean into this. I like all the shadows and the high contrast and things like that. And so, from a photographic perspective, I think I finally have at least been able to articulate what it is I like when I shoot.
How do you define your style? What do you
I think
call
probably that I mean, I don't know. I if I had to say one word, gritty.
it?
I like some grit to my picture, but with that grit comes, again, the shadows. It's hard to do a light and airy, gritty picture. So I like to employ the use of shadows where I can.
You called it something, and when you wrote me back, you called it some kind.
Oh, the
Chiarosco or something, or
yeah,
Chiaroso.
the artsy fartsy way of saying it, chiaroscuro.
Oh,
That's
chiaroscuro. Yes.
yeah. So Yeah, that's what it's called.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, in those worlds, in those circles. But I would never walk around
Okay.
using that word. So
So it's like it's great. It's interesting because I'm sure you've learned a lot about photography and about shooting in very dark places, because I think that's something that a lot of people don't know how to, and I'm like you said, like you've learned
it's
along the way. Yeah.
it's definitely challenging, right? Like
Mhm.
it's challenging in a way that you don't ordinarily encounter in photography. At least I didn't ordinarily encounter. Even in a studio where all your lights are off except the ones you're trying to use for the picture, you're not trying to necessarily feature. I mean, some people do, but it's not that common. When you go into a barbecue pit room, you're saying, hey, I want to feature this background. So I need this background to be in there, but I want the shadows. I want it to look like it does every day that these people are working here. I don't want to like turn on all the lights and add more lights and things like that. I want to try to get it as close to what it is when they're there.
That's interesting. That and it does. That's and I love that so much about what you're doing, is because it doesn't look phony. It doesn't look overlit. It looks like you're in there with the person on a day-to-day basis. And you said the first place you had done was Smoke Sessions BBQ. Did he understand what kind of project you're working on, or did you just
I doubt it, right? I mean, there was no. I just described something, and at that time, I don't know that I fully understood what I
Mhm.
had this idea, and but at the time, it was just kind of like, hey, Chad, how about I take some pictures of you? You'll get some because it was just I just wanted to test out my some lights. That this kind
Yeah.
of coincided with me getting some lights, and I don't know that he knew he was like going to be part of Ministers of Smoke
Does Chad
or
know he
anything
was
like
the
that.
first one?
I think so.
Oh,
I think so. I
yeah.
mean, it's really funny too because I remember when I took that picture, I was like, "Oh man, this is awesome!" And now I look back, I'm like, I want to delete this off my account because it's so bad. I should go
You
back to
can. It's
Chad
for
and see if I I could, but at the same time, for me personally, you go back to the old pictures and it shows an evolution of
Mhm.
style and evolution of skill, and that's part of my fingerprints on the journey as well.
Your journey, yeah, and it's you can't be George Lucas and go back and re-edit the the old Star Wars movies. You can't. You gotta just
Even if he should have, yeah,
exactly. Do you have a favorite photo or photos? Can you? That's a. It's like the old,
yeah, picking between your children
yeah,
type of
exactly,
thing.
yeah.
I I think that this may be a weird one, but Andrew Soto has a state. He has a tattoo on his fingers, and that's probably my. It has a state of Texas and then BBQ, and that's one of my favorite photos, mostly because that's the first time I used the new GFX, and if you saw the raw image, you would not believe that that photo came from that because I was actually just testing out the camera. I wasn't really posed. I was that wasn't like a posed picture. I took a picture of him sitting down in his in the dining room there at Butters Barbecue, and I just happened to snap that and put the focus on his hand. And we're talking about a tiny corner of
Oh,
the whole frame, and the fact that that picture that camera was able to capture a whole frame, and we just carved up a tiny piece of it and blew it up, and you can still see the pores on his fingers and like his finger hairs coming out. Like the amount of resolution
sharpness!
in
Wow.
that is just because I like the picture on its own, but the fact that that represents like 14% of the surface area of the original picture, that to me is just amazing technology, and has become my favorite. I think because of that. Yeah, that's probably my favorite. I also like. I took a picture of Isao Ramos at 2M, and he was just. We were trying to take a regular portrait, him sitting next to kind of like the traditional, hey, I'm standing next to my pit type of thing. And he was like, hey, just hold on a second, I need to check these briskets. And he opens up the pit and all the smoke. And if you're there at 2 a.m. in the morning, the way their their pit room is oriented, if it's early, then the smoke, I mean the rays of light come across his pit room. And so he opened that door, and the smoke
Mhm.
goes out, and it's created a nice glorious effect. So yeah, probably my two favorite pictures. I don't know if those are my two favorite. Those are among my two
Two
favorite
among,
pictures.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And both of them were not necessarily like planned at all. One I didn't even know would be a picture. The Butters picture, I didn't even know that was going to be a thing until after I was editing. And then Esau, that was me stopping what I was trying to do and just let that happen. And I really like that 2M picture as well.
So what was the hardest photo to take, or hardest place to shoot?
A lot of them have been difficult, and the name of the place escapes me. But one of the places that I just had like some technical difficulties was in Wheeling, West Virginia. Oh man, I have forgotten the name of the place, but that one was really tough. And then also in Burnt Bean, their room it's a really cool pit room, but it's not necessarily, I don't know, you could get a lot of cool pictures in there, but I found it personally a little challenging. So we took a picture of Ernest, and I had to like break out some lighting modifiers that I never use,
Huh.
or at least rarely use, so that I could take the picture that I wanted to take, because of how the pit room is laid out and the lighting that's in there. So we turned off like all the lights but one, and I had to bring in two lights. So I just got through telling you I use either one or three.
You
Well,
used
that's
two.
not true apparently, because I used two, and I had to do these lighting modifiers on grids so that I just lit him up. And that was a surprisingly challenging place. But I mean, honestly, they're all,
Each
and
have their
maybe
own.
that's what I like about this, is that they almost all present some kind of challenge, and the process of figuring out that challenge. And sometimes I'm more successful than others, but figuring out that challenge is what keeps this academically interesting.
And you're generally getting there before they're open, right?
Almost always, yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it's sometimes I don't get a choice, right? If I'm going to travel somewhere and I only have a little narrow window, but it typically is the case that I'm there before opening, and that's usually better for the barbecue joint and for me for doing photography.
Was there a story, was it City Market that you had, that we had talked
Oh
about?
yeah, so Gerald,
Rest in
rest
peace,
in
yeah.
peace. Sharon, his wife told me later that he was just joking and forgot to tell me that he was joking, but he told me to meet him there at 4 in the morning, and so I did. And he was a little surprised to see me, and but I think he liked it because he said all the other photographers have been way late. And anyway, he told me 4, thinking I would protest, and he would tell me, 6 or 7 or
Yeah.
8 or whatever. I never protested, so I just showed up at 4, and she was
Did you
telling me
did you
about
feel like it was
it.
a test almost, or?
I just thought that 4 was supposed to be the right time, so I was like, fine, that's they whatever gets me the best pictures. And I was able to spend some good, because nobody else is there, so we were able
Yeah.
to talk a while, and I learned a lot. You play the Central Texas relations game, and we know some of the same people,
Huh.
and it turned out to be a cool experience for me, and that was worth it to get there at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
I actually got there before he did, and that's what made him feel a little bit bad, because he forgot that he told me 4. So
That's
he
what.
ended up showing up like at 4:15, 4:30, something like
Mhm.
that.
And I think I had told you that when I wanted to interview him, and I think we set it up for a couple weeks after he had passed, but when were setting up the interview, it was something like 5 in the morning. It was something,
Yeah,
I would have had to get up at 3, I think, or something wild. And I'm like,
yeah,
okay, I'll do it. Like it was just,
yeah,
and so I think that maybe is his like that was his joke, that kind
Yeah.
of like a joke, test joke or something, like his little thing to see
Yeah.
if you play, because I've gotten notes back from people after I've like played snippets of their like posted snippets of their interview, and they're like, I can't believe like you posted this, and then I'll say, oh, I'm so sorry. They're like, no, I'm just kidding. Like, so, and sometimes it's the like it's like
Yeah.
texting the translation sometimes, like email or text.
Right. Right.
What makes barbecue so special to you?
I know this is cliche because everyone says the same thing, but it's the people, right? It starts with the food and ends with the people. They're super hardworking. Nobody's in this for the money, or if they are, they're man. Well,
Good luck.
anyway,
Good luck
just
with that, I
yeah,
guess.
good luck with that. It's this dedication to their craft, right? See, it's trying to get better, and I think that speaks to me. Again, earlier I mentioned the journey, my photographic journey. I'm trying to get to be a better photographer. I would love to delete some of the older photos, but that it just reflects part of my journey, and I see that same thing in the bar. I mean, I think most of these some of me have said stuff to this effect, but they thought that they were great pit masters years ago when they first started, and now they look back. Man, I didn't even know a fraction of what I used to know.
Mhm.
But that journey that took them from there to here, I really respect and appreciate. And because we've talked before. I'm a burger guy, and when I see burgers, there's so many great burgers at barbecue joints. And why is that? They're the difference is their approach, and it's like the entire approach to their craft comes out in whatever food they're making, whether it's their desserts or their sides or the meats, and that speaks to me. And I think after all that, the thing that just blows me away is that they'll spend years figuring this out and turn right around and tell their quote unquote competitor how they figured it out.
Yeah.
And it's an amazing community. I don't see anything like that anywhere else in my limited life experience, but that's what I love about it. The food happens to be awesome, but that's not like what I love.
Hmm.
It's the people.
Yeah. And that's what I tried to explain. I got a text from someone. They were asking. They were traveling. I don't think he'll be watching this because I don't think he care. But he had gone to Goldie's, and it was too
Mhm,
late. He had picked some up from the airport and whatever. And he's like, I
mhm,
came too late, and he's kind of an odd guy. And so I gave him a list of other places to go, and he ended up going to Panther City. And I said, oh, did you try the elotes? And I sent him a photo. And he said, I'm trying to I wanted to eat healthy. I want to eat healthy, and I want to, or something. It was something to that, like kind
mhm.
of assuming that I don't eat healthy or that barbecue isn't healthy. Number one, I don't know why he's going to get barbecue, but number two,
Yeah,
if he thinks that, if he has that kind of mindset, but also it's like people think that, like, if I have friends that think that this is all I eat, or this is all I do, or this is like I'm only consuming meat, or I'm only like, it's such a weird concept in my mind, but it's the people. I love the people that are involved, and I want to promote the people, and I love the conversations with people, and everyone's coming from a different background, and it's so interesting,
mhm,
and it's also so it's a challenge, and what people are there's a commonality because of the hours that they spend honing what they do. I think that's a
right.
fun kind of stuff in and there. That's a quick aside, but I think it's funny how people probably just assume you're just eating all this
Yeah, just
You're just a
I
big
eat
glutton for.
barbecue 3 days, or 3 meals a day, and
Yeah.
7 days a week, and I look like I eat barbecue that much, but that's
No.
that's not the case.
But it's even someone like Blake who says from Blake's a Southern Milling, he'll
Mhm.
say, I haven't had brisket in a month, or I haven't had brisket in two
Yeah,
months, and then it's just funny how people have a conception of what this world is,
right,
and I think as
right,
you and I and others that are listening and watching this have realized, there's all these layers, and it's in the end it all falls upon the people. If the
mhm,
people weren't a good set of people, if they're a bunch of jerks, I think it would be a hard
right,
thing
right,
to
right.
wrap our heads around. What was can you talk about some really interesting pits that you photographed, or that you've been around, that you love, or people should keep their eyes out
Ooh.
for?
Well, yeah. So for me, I mean, this isn't going to be a fun answer, but I like those old school. But so we talked about Gerald, and that's where they've got this. you'll fire off to one side, the old school pit,
I love those.
and those are fun. Those are really cool. In San Antonio, I think it's called Barbecue Station. They have the same deal. Those are just more photogenic. They produce more smoke. There's more soot on the walls because of that,
Mhm.
and it just is cooler. And so, all credit to the awesome, efficient offset smoker builders because they do amazing work. But it's, I mean, man, give me some bricks or some stone pits. Those are cool. Those are the two. I'm sure I've seen more, but those are the two that come to mind.
Did you have some favorite locations?
So if we don't do if we don't add on the photographing part, maybe this doesn't fit. But Prime Barbecue in Knightdale, North Carolina, in terms of location, man, that dude has thought of everything. There's not like a napkin dispenser that is not there on purpose. Like
Wow.
every single, it is super impressive and amazing, amazing barbecue. But in terms of like location, man, probably Pecan Lodge in Dallas. It's in Deep Ellum. Actually, two of my favorite locations are the Terry Blacks and the
That's
Pecan
really
Lodge. They're
close. Yeah.
they yeah they're like a block away from each
Yeah.
other, and they have cool pit rooms. And they just happen to be photogenic.
Mm.
The pit room in Pecan Lodge, just the way the lighting is set up, and their pits are very unique. The way that they're arrayed, they're these custom built pits,
I was gonna say they're
and
not by like any
just
of the known pit builders. Yeah.
no, yeah, I don't know who built them,
Yeah, I don't
but
know either.
just it is still offset, but it's like like the firebox basically runs along the back of it, and so in the way that it exhausts is just a little bit different, and so where they're putting the wood in to feed the firebox, where when they open up the pits, just what happens to the smoke, the way that that room is lit, and it's just dark. It's pretty fun in terms
Oh,
of a
cool.
location.
Can you tell us something about you that we don't know?
I mean, nobody knows me, so that's pretty easy to answer, I guess, because anything I say will be something that no one knows.
Awesome.
I think that's, I'm really into military history. I have a military history podcast that I do. It's a slow release because I have to do so I read a lot of military history. I'm usually reading military history books, and after, so I'll just pick a battle and I'll read 5 or 10 books about it, and then I'll do a podcast, and I know it's a super weird, random
Oh, that's
thing,
cool. That's killer.
but that is what I do. It's called Battle Rattle, and I have a great time with it. And then the other thing is I coach soccer, so also super random. But
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, I coach 2 teams, and I've coached for the last several years, and like it. I enjoy it. It's a fun. It's the other thing I read a ton about.
Oh.
And
I've been watching a little more. It's probably because of Ted Lasso, but I watch a little more. I've been watching a lot more
it's a
soccer, and
great
I
show.
and I respect it so much more. I think I used to just because it was from a distance watching it. I think maybe they television like televised wise, I think they televise it better than they ever did
Mhm.
back
Yeah,
to kind of give you, because I think it used to just be almost just like a static screen, almost like hockey used to be.
yeah,
And so I never got into it, but then watching it now and realizing the nuances, and yeah, that's cool. That's
yeah.
I
It's
used
fun.
to.
I have a good time with it.
It's actually, and it's amazing exercise. You're running so
Yeah. Well,
much.
I'm not doing the
I know. No,
exercising
I'm
part.
saying
I'm
for the
just
people
doing
that are doing it.
I'm doing the whistling part. So
It's a good exercise. So your favorite burgers at barbecue joints? Some of
this is
them.
tough.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me preface this by saying that just about every burger at a barbecue joint is good, like better than most other burgers, and it goes back to that whole thing. I think they think about it better than most burger joints. I think the other thing too is that burgers are so subjective, right?
Definitely.
Um, yeah, I mean, I don't like certain things on my burgers, and the next person may think that that makes a burger amazing,
I agree.
and that's tough. So that being said, I think my first religious experience with a burger at a barbecue joint was the L&L burger, the Leroy and Lewis. I had that, and I actually ordered it because it was the only thing ready at the time. and I got it, and I actually got it to go, and I was like, I'll just eat it later. And I was like, let me at least taste it while it's here, while it's hot. And I ate it, and I was just gonna take a bite or two, see what it was all about. Ate the whole thing. It was amazing, and it's still one of my favorite burgers. And it's kind of like the standard. I'm like, okay, is it better than this? Moose Craft does a really good version of that, and it's really good. It's one of the best burgers I've had in LA. Burnt Bean, though, their burger is incredible. It is super, super good. It's one of my favorites ever. Not just at a barbecue joint, but just anywhere. I had a burger recently at Reese Brothers that when it was described, I was like, okay, that's a little too cute. Because I hate when people try to get too cute with burgers. Just give me some meat, some cheese, maybe throw one or two other things on there, and just let me eat it. And it had like a tostada and some refried beans and stuff. It was amazing. It was
Really?
really, really, oh, it was
Well, their
really
food
good.
just looks
And
insane, but I could.
everything that I had at Reese Brothers was so good, so good. Their sausage too. They had like this queso fundido sausage, and it is one of the best sausages I've ever had at any barbecue joint. I'm trying. Oh, Dane's. Dane's has such a good burger,
And I've
and
heard just
I feel like
amazing things about. Yeah.
everybody knows that. So that's a good example.
No,
Like
those.
I don't like red onions on my burgers, and there are that, but other people think that that's amazing. So, but even with red onions, it's an amazing burger and should be tried by everybody. So, I feel like I'm forgetting somebody, but those are probably like the three that
Mhm.
or three or four that come to my mind
No, those are great. That's
off the
great
top of
options
my
for
head.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's good to know. And when I talked to Evan Leroy, he was saying kind of about how their burger, how they came up with their ideas for the burger, and then it just seems like that has been replicated a lot across the United States. Like a
Yeah,
lot of people have.
right.
That's kind of a lot of people aspire to make their burger as good as the LNL burger.
Well, that is a challenge because there's this pretty amazing. So
Have you had the oil can burger from Burnt Bean where he
no,
does
I
au
have
jus on
not
top?
had yeah, I haven't had that one, and we'll say it's almost like not a burger, right? It's
Yeah, it's like a sloppy Joe, or not even a sloppy Joe. It's a
it becomes something else entirely by doing that, and in a positive way. But no, I forgot what they call it, but he
I
so
think it's something
again
red, something
he
burger, right, or something red or
yeah, I don't
red.
remember
I don't
what it
know.
was called, but everything on that burger has been thought out and and tested, and it's just you can tell. You eat it, and you're like, man, this is virtually perfect.
Yeah,
And so I can't say enough good things. All those burgers though, I mean,
yeah,
man,
yeah.
they're just the guy who did Flat Point Barbecue.
Oh,
Um,
heavy-handed.
yeah, heavy handed. So he's not, I don't think he's doing the barbecue thing anymore. But you take that same personality and he's doing heavy handed now. And I tried heavy handed was a month ago.
Mhm.
It was so good. It
Yeah,
was
it
a
looks
really good burger.
insane. I think I saw it on like
It's
Bobby
yeah,
Flay. Like
there.
my mom was watching some random like Bobby Flay and his daughter were going around places, and they went to heavy-handed. I went, oh, how come I haven't
Uh,
tried his burger?
I didn't know
His
that. No,
barbecue was awesome.
I just knew that he was doing that now. I heard that
I
he
think we
wasn't
had
doing
talked. I think we
barbecue.
had discussed
Yeah,
like
maybe it was you that told me. And he went and did heavy handed. I'm like, well, we're gonna try it.
I didn't know you had tried it. That's awesome.
I was just a few miles away, a couple miles away, with my in laws, and so I was like, well, I'm here. I might as well go try it. I
Okay.
tried it. I was like, this is an amazing burger. So,
Okay. Well, that leads into you have kind of a burger project. Is that just kind of a personal project
oh
or
yeah, I mean, it's not a project. It's
that's
I
a
eat
project? That's
burgers,
a
right?
fun.
It's a life project. It's how I achieve my
Your
physical girth
physique.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't get this with salads, I'll tell you. Yeah, I mean, I've traveled a lot for work. Probably for close to like 20 years, I've been keeping tabs on what I think is the best. Because you get those conversations where someone's saying, "Oh, this burger is better than that." And they're like, "No, that not only is that not as good a burger, it's not as good a burger as this." And then you start comparing your burger experience. So I've kept track of it, and now I have like this top 20 list that I keep track of. And every time I have a burger, I ask myself, does this fit on, is this a top 20 burger? And if it is, where does it fit on my ranking? And so yeah, I'll go to a new, if I'm going to go to a new community, I'll do the research and find out, especially from locals, what are the best burgers there. And So it's been one thing you learn is that sometimes just because someone is local doesn't mean they know the best food
Yeah,
in that area. So
that's
I've
actually
had plenty of conversations. Yeah.
yeah, and it also too people, it's especially when it comes to food, there's things that people have had forever that they
Yeah.
love that maybe isn't the best, but it's like it
Yeah.
harkens to it. It opens up a memory of,
Right.
you know,
Right.
visceral. Yeah.
Or they eat somewhere and they're so this is fine for me. I don't need to go test out
Yeah.
other places. This is okay, and that's all I need, and
And
that's okay.
I've heard people say like I don't really, no, I'm not really into food. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
well, that's
yeah.
it's just like it's sustenance. Some people like it's just food is food, and they
It's
don't want it.
fuel, keeps you going. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, some people don't get nearly as excited about it.
exactly. And so I'd asked what motivates you, and your answer was amazing. That when we had gone back and forth. So what motivates you
You mean in as it
in
relates to this
general?
project?
Yeah, like the projects keep you going. What keeps you in general?
I
Like
I
what's
I think I'd like to learn. I think that's ultimately what motivates me to do any next thing. I like learning new things in learning more about the things that I think I already know about. That is perhaps the best motivator in my life
Mhm.
is what else can I learn about this subject. So
What's your what have you been given any like a key nugget of business advice over the years?
yeah, my best friend in high school, his grandfather, he said something that I never understood until I owned my own business, and he said, basically, because we were talking about church, and he said something to the effect of, "You should run your church like a business, and your business like a church, and you'll always make the right decisions." And I'm like, "Oh, that doesn't make a lot of sense." And as I have had my own business, especially since my business is a people business, and if you get caught up and then I'm speaking just from I'm sure I'm like a horrible business person, but if you make decisions based on like on just the dollar or short-sighted things, then you start to make compromised decisions. But if you make decisions based on trying to help people and improve their lives, solve their problems, and do things for the quote unquote right reasons and make healthy long term relationships, and the business just kind of seems to take care of itself. And I feel like I feel like maybe that's one thing that attracts me about the barbecue world. I'm sure there's plenty of examples of people making short-sighted decisions, but I think that a lot of these barbecue pit masters are like, hey, let's make good food. Let's not get obviously they need to make money off of it, but I don't know that the dollar is driving every decision. It's let me make great food and the money will work
Mhm.
itself out, and you still have to make compromises, you have to make business decisions. But if anyway, that advice to me was
No,
like, hey,
that's great.
do the right thing first, and those business decisions in the long run, well, you may lose on this one, but in the long run, you'll be okay. And I feel like that has played itself out for me personally.
No, I agree with that. And also too, like people that are interested in their employees' welfare
Yeah,
and furthering their lives, like it comes back. You reap what it's, yeah, like a church. That's great. That's great advice. That's amazing. That's cool. Thank you. Then you
yeah.
also do you've been talking about classes. Is that something that going forward you're going to continue doing classes?
I think so. I have a good time with it. My wife was asking me the other day, is it worth it? And I'm like, well, of course it's worth it. If anybody comes to me and says, hey, I want to learn about photography, man, I'm going to drop everything I'm doing. Probably a bad business decision, but I mean, I geek out on this stuff. I love to talk about a lot of things. Just like I love to talk about barbecue. When somebody asks me, hey, what's the best barbecue? Where should I go? I drop everything I'm doing and say, hey, let's, let's talk about this. And this is why it's good. Well, in my classes, I get the opportunity to say, hey, these are the things I've learned. It took me however many years, so I've been doing photography ever since I was a teenager, and more so at some points in life than others. I took a little hiatus, and ever since I've come back into photography, and I've learned things. And then once I started Ministers of Smoke, I feel like my learning accelerated. And so the barbecue classes are basically saying, hey, these are the things that like literally took me years to learn. Let's spend a day talking about them. And I just,
That's fun.
it's
I
super
love
fun. It's just a fun thing to do. And yeah, so I have a good time. I would like to think that they have a good time, and they learn things. I do hope to continue to do them into the future. So
people should follow along your social media, and that way you'll
yeah, and I think this next year at the beginning of the year, I'm working on still figuring some details out on doing one outside of Texas, and right now we are looking at Charleston. So
that would also be just, yeah. I want to go to Charleston just to walk around.
Charleston is an
so gorgeous.
amazing city, great food town, but maybe a little more accessible to some people. So I'll probably always do one. I think I'll probably always do one in Texas and one outside of Texas, just kind of going forward until people stop signing up.
All right. Well, hopefully I could be on the short list. I'll hopefully be able to leave the confines of my life. That would be amazing. That would be wonderful. Now I had said, and let's see if it'll turn out to be the same. Your perfect barbecue meal, if you could pull from different barbecue spots.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't know. The real answer is I don't know, because so like I've had great stuff at every what's the best brisket? Well, there's like 30 places who have the best brisket. It's I don't know.
Or if you want to pull for like a fun way to pull from different places.
Yeah. So okay. Yeah. So in again, I don't even know what the meal looks like. I think that a beef rib is probably Goldie's beef rib. I remember one time in particular where it had a great crust and the fat underneath was perfectly rendered. Is a pretty divine bite. Truth, I remember being there that day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the best brisket I've ever had. And so Truth is probably who I'd pick for. Man, I'd pick Truth for a lot of things, but especially the brisket. But I also love the pastrami brisket at Cadillac.
Yeah,
like
that was the next thing.
Favorite barbecue bite is pastrami brisket at Cadillac. The ribs. So I went to shoot in Columbia, South Carolina. There's Scott's A1, and he gave me a couple of ribs, and those are the best ribs I've ever had in my life. In my entire life. They were superb, and I've had a lot of amazing ribs. And then I think for sausage, probably the Tejas chili relleno sausage is probably my favorite. So most of these are like, oh, I remember exactly where I was, and I remember that eating experience. But that's probably it. Hat tip though, I already mentioned the queso fundido sausage from Grease Brothers, and I also say like the other like, so that's like 1A, 1B, 1C is probably at Moose Craft. They have this like I can't remember what it's called, like
the chili verde
green chili, yeah,
or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And I can't remember exactly what's in it, but I remember eating that, and I'm like, this is a perfectly executed sausage. So those are.
I remember from early days, like I remember eating like 2 of those in my car. Like I was going to take it home, and I kind of like
in my car too.
And I ate it in my car, and I think I made a huge mess, but it was so good.
Yeah, in fact, when I had that, I was on my way to the airport, so I was like, I don't want to eat a lot because I don't have any bathroom issues on a plane, and so I had just like a sampling from Moose Craft, and I ate that whole sausage because there was nothing. I mean, I was like, this is
you almost
so
can't
good.
not. It's something that
it was great. I think I pretty much ate everything in that bag. I'm like, well, I will suffer the consequences.
I think you had burnt bean for sides.
Oh my gosh, yeah, because everything there, including he does the Shiner rice. I think that's what it's called, Shiner rice. Oh man, that was amazing. Yeah, I think it's kind of like the hash at Goldie's. It kind of reminds me of that. A completely different dish, the sides there, and then the tater tot. Going back to truth, tater tot casserole. That was that. I love that. And I also would say, so I don't like vegetables, and I think I'm allergic to them. But
Of course.
Mumford's in Corpus Christi, is that right? They have these green beans. I don't know what they do to them, but they are amazing. They are so good. So that needs to be on there, and
And
perhaps will make
Mumford's
my
was a
mom
top
happy.
50 in like the
Yeah,
2000s.
that's formerly a top 50 place, but their green beans might have been the best thing on their tray. I was like,
Wow.
this is unbelievable that I love this so much.
And
But
desserts.
yeah, oh man, so again, going back to burnt bean, I love that big red tres leches. And then locally, so I work by Cadillac, so a lot of things I compare in relation to Cadillac, and their crack cake is super great. But I think the best that I've ever had is Miller's Smokehouse. They have a sopapilla cheesecake,
I've heard
and
they
oh man, it is divine. It just, you could just sit there and you would hate yourself afterwards, but you could just sit there and eat the whole thing by yourself. It is really really
uh
good.
oh, I cannot wait to try. No, I've heard this is I think the third person that's told me, and some from very people that I really trust their palate, and they said that this is just like wicked, wicked good. I think I know
It's
some that went. I think Kelly Yandel said that like she went down to she had it on the way down to Austin, and
yeah,
then picked up one on the way.
yeah. It is worthy. It is
Uh,
really really good.
well, that's great to hear. Excellent. And then, have you had the cake at Truth ever?
No, I didn't.
I've just heard
I
great
wanted
things
to,
about that. Yeah,
but I was so full from the
I
rest of
think
the
I think
meal.
a lot of people have said that.
Yeah, I mean, what an incredible meal, but no, I never made it to
Yeah.
desserts.
Do you have a place that's a wish list, a place that you haven't visited that you want to photograph?
I've never been to Snow's. I'm not really into
Yeah, you can't.
barbecue,
Yeah,
so
you
I've
can't even
never
say
been
that. Like
there.
people. Yeah,
Yeah, it takes a little bit of effort to make that happen. And on Saturday mornings, I coach
yeah.
these soccer games, and that's usually my obstacle. But I need to go down. I can't put that off. Like I said, I'm not a bona fide barbecue guy if I haven't been to Snow's, and I have not been to Snow's. Now, I
Yeah.
think I've been to everywhere else. No, I haven't really, but pretty close.
Yeah, you've
And
been. Yeah.
but that's the top on my to go list.
What's your favorite not barbecue restaurant?
I have one. It's like the local place. It's called Kinney's Woodfire Grill, and mostly because I've never been there without it being good. Like it's always good. I remember one time I even went there, and I'm the type of guy that orders the same. Like if it was good last time, it's good. It's good enough for me, and I'm gonna
Yeah.
keep getting the same thing. And one time they're like, "Hey, we have a special, some meatloaf sandwich." I'm like, "Meatloaf sandwich at a real restaurant? That doesn't make sense." It was amazing, and so I go there. That's my favorite because they're a little unique, and they do great food. They also have a great burger. Most of my eating experiences that have been good have been like on travels, and the problem with that is you only get like one shot, right? You go to this one place and it was really good, and you never go back again.
That would be Kenny's Wood Fire Grill. Now, I've never heard of it,
Kenny's
but
Woodfire Grill in
other than
in Addison, Texas. Somebody's listening to this and like, really? But that's the answer. I just
okay.
wish they made chicken fried steak. So it's the only thing that they don't have that I wish they
Where's your favorite place to get chicken fried steak? Or where
Oh
have you had
man.
or where have you had an amazing one? Because I love chicken fried steak. I assume most people listen to this too as well.
So yeah, growing up, I'm not a discerning chicken fried steak eater. And I know that's probably criminal to some people, but I mean, we grew up. There's this chain in Texas called K-Bob's. Maybe there are other places I don't know,
I've heard of
but
it.
that was we did not come from the most affluent circumstances, and so once a year we went to K-Bob's on our birthday, and I'm sure K-Bob's is not the greatest chicken fried steak, but to me in my memories that was like best meal of the year. I don't think that would probably rank among my favorite. I like Lulu's Cafe in San Antonio. There's been a lot. I don't know. I don't keep track of chicken fried steak the way I keep track of burgers and barbecue joints.
Uh,
So perhaps I should start my list and be testing more of these places out. Yeah,
so,
the problem is that like it's easy to please me when it comes to chicken fried steak.
yeah.
So I can go to Applebee's and enjoy. I don't know the Chili's because I don't know that Applebee's does chicken fried steak, but I can go to a Chili's and be okay.
It's a
And
gravy. Maybe it's just a gravy thing. Like you love
yeah,
that whole
maybe.
breading and
Yeah,
gravy.
I like making my own chicken fried steak, and so it's something I like to make. Try to experiment with like cold smoking my chicken fried steak to see what that does. And so I do that on occasion.
What advice would you give to a fledgling photographer?
Take a ton of pictures, and mostly like everything, practice makes perfect. And when you start taking a lot of pictures and you start looking at your pictures, you start to analyze what makes you like this picture. Why do you like it? You don't like that picture. Why do you not like it? And you start to formulate kind of your own theory, and as a result, you create your own style. And you only get there by volume. Some people need way more volume than others, but there is a mandatory process, and it is through volume. And so that's the advice.
Favorite candy bar?
Reese's peanut butter cups.
That's mine too.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure that counts as a candy bar, but
I
that's the
think it
answer.
does. In my head, it does. I love that combination. Why is it something from? Have
I
you
don't.
loved it from since you were a child?
I don't know. I'm not even a huge peanut butter guy, but for some reason, I love that peanut butter and the chocolate, and just the way I eat it. I have my own way of eating it, and
What is your
yeah,
way of eating it?
I eat the outsides first, and
Okay,
then I basically peel off the chocolate with my teeth. It's embarrassing. It's not something I can
that
do in
is
public. I have to make sure I'm
it's
alone.
funky.
And yeah, I do that, but it's my way and it tastes better that way. And no regrets.
No, none.
And
That
no
none.
shame.
There
No
shouldn't
shame
be.
unless people are watching.
And then also, yeah, you're not eating it here on the show, so at least it's not public.
Right, that's right. Thank you.
I'm not going to force you. Yeah, exactly. And then also, is there a place, a barbecue place? Because you mentioned some during this that it's interesting. Is there a barbecue place that's like a sleeper place that people aren't? I hate the word sleeper, but like I hate when people say don't sleep on it because what that's everyone says. I also don't say when people say it hits different. That's just it seems like there's these phrases that people keep reiterating. But is there a place that you're surprised that not a lot of people are going to?
No, I think the difficulty is because this question is answered relative to like how much other people are talking. And I'm not sure that I know enough
Okay.
about like for instance in Texas, the most recent barbecue place that I think is not being talked about enough is Reese Brothers. Because the day I went was a nearly perfect platter of barbecue, and I don't see them talked about that much, and so that's probably the answer for there. But I've had great barbecue other places, and I just so I wonder, my own little world. So, for instance, I mentioned earlier Prime. I don't hear anybody in Texas talk about Prime, and I had a platter of barbecue. I had an abundance of platter. I mean, it was so much food, and everything on that tray was nearly perfect or perfect. But he had a super long line of people there, so they're probably in that area. They're probably talking about it. So it's not a very great way to answer
No,
your
but
question.
that's a good one that
I
people should.
apologize. Yeah, so I've been to some places that are fantastic, and I wasn't aware that they were doing stuff. For instance, I went to Little Miss in Arizona, and I thought it was fantastic, and I had basically never heard of it, but before I went the first time. Now I know of it, of course, and now I've heard other people talk about it. So I guess I'm not as clued in, and it may be the case that in San Antonio everybody's talking about Reese Brothers, and I'm not aware of that. But
But they don't get mentioned
I
as much as I think they should.
I do. I mean, you asked this question, and now that you've asked it, I have such a hard time answering it. But I will tell people. I mean, I don't know why not enough people are talking about this
Mhm.
place. Like when we were doing our barbecue, our photography class, we were eating at Panther City, and it's my opinion. I'm like, this is the most. I don't know how some place can be a top 10 and still be underrated.
I
But
agree.
Panther City is amazing, and I feel like not enough people talk about it, despite the fact that they're a top 10 barbecue joint.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's a very long answer to a really straightforward question. I'm so sorry that I don't have
No,
a
I
great
think that's good. I
answer.
think honestly, I
Yeah.
want to say that I think 2M is
Oh my gosh, yes.
not talked
2M
about
is
as
one of
much
the
as they.
best barbecue experiences I've ever had. I went to 2M the first time, and this was years ago, and it had to be close to when they had first started opening. And my barbecue experience was not as robust. But I went there because I had a conference in San Antonio, and I walked in that line just kind of thinking it was every other barbecue joint. And I sat down and I was blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, this is some of the best brisket I've ever had. The tortillas were great, the macaroni, chicharroni. I mean, everything was amazing. And yeah, you're right. Like, not enough people talk about that place.
Yeah.
So
So
I just remembered one, Kevin.
okay.
Soul Belly in Las Vegas.
Ah,
I don't know that I was expecting very much, and that it was a surprisingly great. I shouldn't. I'm insulting them by saying surprisingly because he's an accomplished chef.
yeah.
But is Coleman. It was great. The dude makes his own pasta for his macaroni and cheese, but his little pork belly burn-in bites were, oh man, they were amazing. The whole meal that I had was incredible, and now that's an example. I've never heard anybody talk
Yeah, they're not really. Yeah,
about
and
this place.
I think that Bert went out there to do like a collab with him,
I think so. I
right, or
think
something.
so.
Maybe
That sounds
even
right.
Leo. Maybe I don't know. I'm not
I
sure.
can't remember. Somebody has recently been out there, but you don't hear a lot of chatter about his place. But man, I went out there, and that meal that I had was
Yeah,
top
that's
notch.
great to hear
I,
because a
I,
lot of people go through Vegas or for different things, and of course,
a
Blood
lot of
Brothers
different
people
things.
know
Yeah.
about that. But I think that yeah, for a
Hmm.
lot of different, yeah, I would say for like
Yeah,
conventions and things or work, like
that's right.
work,
Sure.
air quotes. But I think that, but people that would be that's great to have that. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for
Yeah.
remembering that while we're on the air. So thank you so much for taking the time. We've spoken for almost an hour and a half. I've enjoyed every minute of it. I know people
Yeah.
are
Thank
going
you.
to, and it's just nice to catch up and good to see you in the.
Absolutely. I've loved it. I love that you're asking me about all the things I love to talk about. So this is super fun for me. Thank you.
Yeah.